Alright, it is 8 o'clock. Welcome back, everyone. This is our fourth night reading from Homer's The Odyssey. So, last night we saw... Or not last night, I'm losing track of time already. Last time, Sunday night, we saw some more from Odysseus' perspective. The really most well-known scenes from the Odyssey came up on Sunday. We had the blinding of the Cyclops and the loss of some of his men, the turning his men to pigs by Circe, and now we've hinted at the next stop on Odysseus' journey being into hell itself. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, and we will see how things go. There may be a familiar face that shows up for those of us who have been sticking around for a while from some of our earlier readings. So we'll see how friendly the departed may be. And so we resume tonight with Book 11 of the Odyssey. Odysseus, his descent into hell, and discourses with the ghosts of the deceased heroes. Now, when we had gone down to the ship and to the sea, first of all, we drew the ship into the fair salt water, and placed the mast and sails in the black ship, and took those sheep and put them therein. And ourselves, too, climbed on board, sorrowing and shedding big tears. And in the wake of our dark-browed ship she sent a favoring wind that filled the sails, a kindly escort. Even Circe of the braided tresses, a dread goddess of human speech. And we set in order all the gear throughout the ship, and sat us down, and the wind and the helmsman guided our bark. And all day long her sails were stretched in her seafaring, and the sun sank, and all the ways were darkened. She came to the limits of the world, to the deep-flowing Oceanus. There is the land and the city of the Cimmerians, shrouded in mist and cloud, and never does the shining sun look down on them with his rays, neither when he climbs up the starry heavens, nor when he again turns earthward from the firmament. But deadly night is outspread over miserable mortals. Thither we came and ran the ship ashore and took out the sheep, but for our part we held on our way along the stream of Oceanus, till we came to the place where Circe had declared to us. There Perimedes and Eurylochus held the victims, but I drew my sharp sword from my thigh, and dug a pit, as it were a cubit in length and breadth, and about it poured a drink offering to all the dead, first with mead, and thereafter with sweet wine, and for the third time with water, and I sprinkled white meal thereon, and entreated with many prayers the strengthless heads of the dead, and promised that on my return to Ithaca I would offer in my halls a barren heifer, the best I had, and fill the pyre with treasure, and apart unto Tiresias alone sacrifice a black ram without spot, the fairest of my flock. But when I had besought the tribes of the dead with vows and prayers, I took the sheep and cut their throats over the trench, and the dark blood flowed forth, and lo, the spirits of the dead that be departed gathered from them out of Erebus, brides and youths unwed, and old men of many and evil days, and tender maidens with grief yet fresh at heart, and many there were wounded with bronze-shod spears, men slain in fight with their bloody mail about them. And these many ghosts flocked together from every side about the trench, with a wondrous cry, and pale fear gat hold on me. Then did I speak to my company, and command them to flay the sheep that lay slain by the pitiless sword, and to consume them with fire, and to make prayer to the gods, to mighty Hades, and to dread Persephone. And myself, I drew the sharp sword from my thigh, and sat there, suffering not the strengthless heads of the dead to draw nigh on the blood, ere I had word of Tiresias. And first came the sore of Elpenor, my companion, that had not yet been buried beneath the wide-weight earth. For we left the corpse behind us in the hall of Circe, unwept and unburied, seeing that another task was instant on us. At the sight of him I wept and had compassion on him, and uttering my voice spake to him winged words. Elpenor, how hast thou come beneath the darkness and the shadow? Thou hast come fleeter on foot than I in my black ship. So spake I, and with a moan he answered me, saying, Son of Laertes, of the seed of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, an evil doom of some god was my bane, and wine out of measure. When I laid me down on the housetop of Circe, I minded me not to descend again by the way of the tall ladder, but fell right down from the roof, and my neck was broken off the bones of the spine, and my spirit went down to the house of Hades. And now I pray thee, in the name of those whom we left, who are no more with us, thy wife and thy sire, who cherished thee when as yet thou wert a little one, and Telemachus, whom thou didst leave in thy halls alone, for as much as I know that on thy way hence from out of the dwelling of Hades thou wilt stay thy well-wrought ship at the Isle of Aeon. Even then, my lord, I charge thee to think on me. Leave me not unwept and unburied as thou goest hence, nor turn thy back upon me, lest haply I bring on thee the anger of the gods. Nay, burn me there with mine armor, all that is mine, and pile me a barrow on the shore of the grey sea, the grave of a luckless man, that even men unborn may hear my story. Fulfill me this, and plant upon the barrow mine oar, wherewith I rowed in the days of my life, while yet I was among my fellows. Even so he spake, and I answered him, saying, All this, luckless man, will I perform for thee and do. Even so we twain were sitting, holding sad discourse, I on the one side stretching forth my sword over the blood, while on the other side the ghost of my friend told all his tale. Anon came up the soul of my mother dead, Anticlea, the daughter of Autolycus, the great-hearted, whom I left alive when I departed for sacred Ilios. At the sight of her I wept, and was moved with compassion. Yet even so, for all my sore grief, I suffered her not to draw nigh to the blood, ere I had word of Tiresias. Anon came the soul of Theban Tiresias, with a golden scepter in his hand, and he knew me, and spake unto me, Son of Laertes, of the seed of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, what seekest thou now, wretched man? Wherefore hast thou left the sunlight, and come hither, to behold the dead in a land of desolate joy? Nay, hold off from the ditch, and draw back thy sharp sword, that I may drink of the blood, and tell thee sooth. So spake he, and I put up my silver-studded sword into the sheath, and when he had drunk the dark blood, even then did the noble seer speak unto me, saying, Thou art asking of thy sweet returning, great Odysseus. But that will the god make hard for thee, for methinks thou shalt not pass unheeded by the shaker of the earth, who hath laid up wrath in his heart against thee, for rage at the blinding of his dear son. Yet even so, through many troubles ye may come home, if thou wilt restrain thy spirit, and the spirit of thy men, so soon as thou shalt bring thy well-wrought ship nigh to the isle of Thrinacia, fleeing the sea of violet blue. When ye find the herds of Helios grazing in his brave flocks, of Helios, who overseeth all and overheareth all things, if thou dost these no hurt, being heedful of thy return, so may ye yet reach Ithaca, albeit in evil case. But if thou hurtest them, I foreshow ruin for thy ship and for thy men, and even though thou shalt thyself escape, late shalt thou return in evil plight, the loss of all thy company, on board the ship of strangers, and thou shalt find sorrows in thy house, even proud men that devour thy living, while they woo thy godlike wife and offer the gifts of wooing. Yet I tell thee, on thy coming thou shalt avenge their violence. When thou hast slain the wooers in thy halls, whether by guile or openly with the edge of the sword, thereafter go thy way, taking with thee a shapen oar, till thou shalt come to such men as know not the sea. Neither eat meat savoured with salt, yea, nor have they any knowledge of ships of purple cheek, nor shapen oars which serve for wings to ships. And I will give thee a most manifest token, which cannot escape thee. In the day when another wayfarer shall meet thee, and say that thou hast a winnowing fan on thy stout shoulder, even then make fast thy shapen oar in the earth, and do goodly sacrifice to the Lord Poseidon. even with a ram and a bull and a boar, the mate of swine, and depart for home and offer holy hecatombs to the deathless gods that keep the wide heaven. To each in order due, and from the sea shall thine own death come, the gentlest death that may be, which shall end thee fordone with smooth old age, and the folk shall dwell happily around thee. This that I say is sooth. So spake he, and I answered him, saying, Tiresias, all these threads, methinks, the gods themselves have spun. But come, declare me this, and plainly tell me all. I see here the spirit of my mother dead. Lo, she sits in silence near the blood, nor deigns to look her son in the face, nor speak to him. Tell me, prince, how may she know me again that I am he? So spake I, and anon he answered me, and said, I will tell thee an easy saying, and will put it in thy heart. Whomsoever of the dead that be departed thou shalt suffer to draw nigh to the blood, he shall tell thee sooth. But if thou shalt grudge any, that one shall go to his own place again. Therewith the spirit of the prince Tiresias went back within the house, when he had told all his oracles. But I abode there steadfastly, till my mother drew nigh and drank the dark blood. And at once she knew me, and bewailing herself spake to me winged words. Dear child, how didst thou come beneath the darkness and the shadow? Thou that art a living man. Grievous is the sight of these things to the living, for between us and you are great rivers and dreadful streams. First, Oceanus, which can no wise be crossed on foot, but only if one have a well-wrought ship. Art thou but now come hither with thy ship and thy company in thy long wanderings from Troy? And hast thou not yet reached Ithaca, nor seen thy wife in thy halls? Even so she spake, and I answered her and said, O my mother, necessity was on me to come down to the house of Hades to seek the spirit of Theban Tiresias. For not yet have I drawn near to the Achaean shore, nor yet have I set foot on mine own country, but have been wandering evermore in affliction. From the day that first I went with goodly Agamemnon to Ilios of the fair steeds, to do battle with the Trojans. But come, declare me this, and plainly tell it all. What doom overcame thee of death that lays men at their length? Was it a slow disease, or did Artemis the archer slay thee with the visitation of her gentle shafts? And tell me of my father and my son that I left behind me. Doth my honor yet abide with them, or hath another already taken it, while they say that I shall come home no more? And tell me of my wedded wife, of her counsel and purpose. Doth she abide with her son and keep all secure, or hath she already wedded the best of the Achaeans? Even so I spake, and anon my lady mother answered me. Yea, verily, she abideth with steadfast spirit in thy halls, and warily, for her the nights wane always, and the days in shedding of tears. But the fair honor that is thine no man hath yet taken, but Telemachus sits at peace on his demesne, and feasts at equal banquets, whereof it is meet that a judge partake, for all men bid him to their house. And thy father abides there in the field, and goes not down to the town, nor lies he on bedding or rugs or shining blankets, but all the winter he sleeps where sleep the thralls in the house, in the ashes by the fire, and is clad in sorry raiment. But when the summer comes, and the rich harvest tide, his beds of fallen leaves are strewn lowly all about the knoll of his vineyard plot. There he lies sorrowing, and nurses his mighty grief. For long desire of thy return, and old age withal comes heavy upon him. Yea, and even so did I too perish and meet my doom. It was not the archer goddess of the keen sight who slew me in my halls with the visitation of her gentle shafts, nor did any sickness come upon me, such as chiefly with a sad wasting draws the spirit from the limbs. Nay, it was my sore longing for thee and thy counsels, great Odysseus, and for thy loving kindness that reft me of sweet life. So spake she, and I mused in my heart, and would fain have embraced the spirit of my mother dead. Thrice I sprang towards her, and was minded to embrace her. Thrice she flitted from my hands as a shadow, or even as a dream, and sharp grief arose ever at my heart. And uttering my voice, I spake to her winged words. Mother mine, wherefore dost thou not abide me, who I am eager to clasp thee, that even in Hades we twain may cast our arms about each the other, and have our fill of chill lament? Is this but a phantom that the high goddess Persephone hath sent me, to the end that I may groan for more exceeding sorrow? So spake I, and my lady mother answered me anon. Ah me, my child, of all men most ill-fated, Persephone, the daughter of Zeus, doth in no wise deceive thee, but even on this wise it is with mortals when they die. For the sinews no more bind together the flesh and the bones, but the great force of burning fire abolishes these. So soon as the life hath left the white bones, and the spirit like a dream flies forth and hovers near. But haste with all thine heart toward the sunlight, and mark all this, that even hereafter thou mayest tell it to thy wife. Thus we twain held discourse together, and lo, the women came up, for the high goddess Persephone sent them forth, all they that had been the wives and daughters of mighty men. And they gathered and flocked about the black blood, and I took counsel how I might question them each one. And this was the counsel that showed best in my sight. I drew my long hanger from my stalwart thigh, and suffered them not all at one time to drink of the dark blood. So they drew nigh one by one, and each one declared her lineage, and I made question of all. Then verily did I first see Tyro, sprung of a noble sire, who said that she was the son of noble Salmoneus, and declared herself the wife of Crethus, son of Aeolus. She loved a river, the divine Enipeus, far the fairest of the floods that run upon the earth, and she would resort to the fair streams of Enipeus. And it came to pass that the girdler of the world, the earth-shaker, put on the shape of the god, and lay by the lady at the mouths of the whirling stream. Then the dark waves stood around them like a hillside bowed, and hid the god and the mortal woman, and he undid her maiden girdle, and shed a slumber over her. Now, when the god had done the work of love, he clasped her hand, and spake and hailed her. Woman, be glad at our love, and when the year comes round, thou shalt give birth to glorious children. For not weak are the embraces of the gods, and do thou keep and cherish them. And now go home, and hold thy peace, and tell it not. But behold, I am Poseidon, shaker of the earth. Therewith he plunged beneath the heaving deep, and she conceived and bare Peleus and Neleus, who both grew to be mighty men, servants of Zeus. Peleus dwelt in wide Iolcos, and was rich in flocks, and that other abode in sandy Pylos. And the queen of women bare yet other sons to Cretheus, even Aeson and Phares and Amethaon, whose joy was in chariots. And after her I saw Antiope, daughter of Asopus, and her boast was that she had slept even in the arms of Zeus, and she bare 2 sons, Amphion and Zethus, who founded first the place of 7-gated Thebes, and they made it a fenced city, for they might not dwell in spacious Thebes unfenced, for all their valiancy. Next to her I saw Alcmene, wife of Amphitryon, who lay in the arms of mighty Zeus, and bare Heracles of the lion heart, steadfast in the fight. And I saw Megara, daughter of Creon, haughty of heart, whom the strong and tireless son of Amphitryon had to wife. And I saw the mother of Oedipides, fair Epicase, who wrought a dread deed unwittingly, being wedded to her own son. Oh, it was Oedipus. Okay, thanks. Good way to spell it differently, thanks. And I saw the mother of Oedipus, fair Epicase, who wrought a dread deed unwittingly, being wedded to her own son. And he that had slain his own father wedded her, and straightway the gods made these things known to men. Yet he abode in pain in pleasant Thebes, ruling the Cadmeans, by reason of the deadly counsels of the gods. But she went down to the house of Hades, the mighty warder, yea, she tied a noose from the high beam aloft, being fast holden in sorrow, while for him she left pains behind full many, even all that the avengers of a mother bring to pass. And I saw lovely Chloris, whom Neleus wedded on a time for her beauty, and brought gifts of wooing past number. She was the youngest daughter of Amphion, son of Iasus, who once ruled mightily in Minion, Orchomenus. And she was queen of Pylos, and bare glorious children to her lord, Nestor and Chromius, and princely Periclymenus, and stately Pero too, and wonder of all men. All that dwelt around her were wooers, but Neleus would not give her, save to him who would drive off from Phyllis the kine of mighty Iphicles, with shambling gait and broad of brow, hard cattle to drive, and none but the noble seer took in hand to drive them. But a grievous fate from the gods fettered him, even hard bonds and the herdsmen of the wild. But then at length the months and days were being fulfilled, as the year returned upon his course, and the seasons came round. Then did mighty Iphicles set him free, and he had spoken out all the oracles, and herein was the counsel of Zeus being accomplished. And I saw Lede, the famous bedfellow of Tyndareus, who bare to Tyndareus 2 sons, hardy of heart, Castor, tamer of seeds, and Polydeuces, the boxer. These twain yet live, but the quickening earth is over them, and even in the netherworld they have honor at the hand of Zeus, and they possess their life in turn, living one day and dying the next, and they have gotten worship even as the gods. And after her I beheld Iphimedea, a bedfellow of Eleos, who said that she had lain with Poseidon. She bare children twain, but short of life were they, godlike Otis and far famed Ephialtes. Now these were the tallest men that earth, the grain-giver, ever reared, and far the goodliest after the renowned Orion. At 9 seasons old they were of breadth 9 cubits and 9 fathoms in height. They it was who threatened to raise even against the immortals in Olympus the din of stormy war. They strove to pile Ossa on Olympus, and on Ossa Pelion with the trembling forest leaves, that there might be a pathway to the sky. Yea, and they would have accomplished it, had they reached the full measure of manhood. But the son of Zeus, whom Leto of the fair locks bare, destroyed the twain, ere the down had bloomed beneath their temples, and darkened their chins with the blossom of youth. And Phaedra and Procris I saw, and fair Ariadne, and the daughter of wizard Minos, whom Theseus on a time was bearing from Crete to the hill of sacred Athens, yet had he no joy of her. For Artemis slew her ere that in sea-girt Dia, by reason of the witness of Dionysus. And Myra and Clymene I saw, and hateful Eriphyle, who took fine gold for the price of her dear lord's life. But I cannot tell or name all the wives and daughters of the heroes that I saw, ere that the immortal night would wane. Nay, it is even now time to sleep, whether I go to the swift ship to my company or abide here, and for my convoy you and the gods will care. So spake he, and dead silence fell on all, and they were spellbound throughout the shadowy halls. Then Arete of the white arms first spake among them. Phaeacians, what think you of this man for comeliness and stature, and within for wisdom of heart? Moreover, he is my guest, though every one of you hath his share in this honor. Wherefore haste not to send him hence, and stint not these your gifts for one that stands in such sore need of them. For ye have much treasure stored in your halls by the grace of the gods. Then too spake among them the old man, Lord Echeneus, that was an elder among the Phaeacians. Friends, behold, the speech of our wise queen is not too wide of the mark, nor far from our deeming. So hearken ye thereto, but on Alcinous here both word and deed depend. Then Alcinous made answer, and spake unto him, Yea, the word that she hath spoken shall hold, if indeed I am yet to live and bear rule among the Phaeacians, masters of the oar. Howbeit, let the stranger, for all his craving, to return. Nevertheless, endure to abide until the morrow, till I make up the full measure of the gift, and men shall care for his convoy, all men, but I in chief, for mine is the lordship in the land. And Odysseus of many counsels answered him, saying, My lord Alcinous, most notable of all the people, if ye bade me tarry here even for a year, and would speed my convoy and give me splendid gifts even that I would choose, and better would it be for me to come with a fuller hand to mine own dear country, so should I get more love and worship in the eyes of all men, whoso should see me after I was returned to Ithaca. And Alcinous answered him, saying, Odysseus, in no wise do we deem thee, we that look on thee to be a knave or a cheat, even as the dark earth rears many such broadcast, fashioning lies whence none can even see his way therein. But beauty crowns thy words, and wisdom is within thee, and thy tale, as when a minstrel sings. Thou hast told with skill the weary woes of all the Argives and of thine own self. But come, declare me this, and plainly tell it all. Didst thou see any of thy godlike company who went up at the same time with thee to Ilios, and there met their doom? Behold, the night is of great length, unspeakable, and the time for sleep in the hall is not yet. Tell me, therefore, of these wondrous deeds. I could abide even till the bright dawn, so long as thou couldst endure to rehearse me these woes of thine in the hall. And Odysseus of the many counsels answered him, saying, My lord Alcinous, most notable of all the people, there is a time for many words, and there is a time for sleep. But if thou art eager still to listen, I would not, for my part, grudge to tell thee of other things more pitiful still, even the woes of my comrades, those that perished afterward, for they had escaped with their lives from the dread war cry of the Trojans, but perished in returning by the will of an evil woman. Now, when holy Persephone had scattered this way and that the spirits of the womenfolk, thereafter came the soul of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, sorrowing, and round him others were gathered, the ghosts of them who had died with him in the house of Aegisthus, and met their doom. And he knew me straightway when he had drunk the dark blood, yea, and he wept aloud, and shed big tears, and he stretched forth his hands in his longing to reach me. But it might not be, for he had now no steadfast strength, nor power at all in moving, such as was aforetime in his supple limbs. At the sight of him I wept and was moved with compassion, and uttering my voice spake to him winged words, Most renowned son of Atreus, Agamemnon, king of men, say what doom overcame thee of death that lays men at their length? Did Poseidon smite thee in thy ships, raising the dolorous blast of contrary winds? Or did unfriendly men do thee hurt upon the land, whilst thou wert cutting off their oxen and fair flocks of sheep, or fighting to win a city and the women thereof? So spake I, and straightway he answered and said unto me, Son of Laertes, of the seed of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, it was not Poseidon that smote me in my ships, and raised the dolorous blast of contrary winds, nor did unfriendly men do me hurt upon the land, but Aegisthus it was that wrought me death and doom, and slew me, with the aid of my accursed wife, as one slays an ox at the stall, after he had bidden me to his house, and entertained me at a feast. Even so I died by a death most pitiful, and round me my company likewise were slain without ceasing, like swine with glittering tusks, which are slaughtered in the house of a rich and mighty man, whether at a wedding banquet, or a joint feast, or a rich clan drinking. Ere now hast thou been at the slaying of many a man, killed in single fight or in strong battle. Yet thou wouldst have sorrowed the most at this sight, how we lay in the hall round the mixing bowl, and the laden boards, and the floor all ran with blood. And most pitiful of all that I heard was the voice of the daughter of Priam, of Cassandra, whom hard by me the crafty Clytemnestra slew. Then I strove to raise my hands as I was dying upon the sword, but to the earth they fell, and that shameless one turned her back upon me, and had not the heart to draw down my eyelids with her fingers, nor to close my mouth. So surely is there naught more terrible and shameless than a woman who imagines such evil in her heart, even as she too had planned a foul deed, fashioning a death for her wedded lord. Verily, I had thought to come home most welcome to my children and my thralls, but she, out of the depth of her evil knowledge, hath shed shame on herself and on all womankind, which shall be forever, even on the upright. Even so he spake, but I answered him, saying, Lo now, in very sooth hath Zeus of the far-born voice wreaked wondrous hatred on the seed of Atreus through the counsels of women from old. For Helen's sake, so many of us perished. And now Clytemnestra hath practiced treason against thee, while yet thou wast afar off. Even so I spake, and anon he answered me, saying, Wherefore do thou too never henceforth be soft even to thy wife, neither show her all the counsel that thou knowest, but a part declare, and let part be hid. Yet shalt not thou, Odysseus, find death at the hand of thy wife, for she is very discreet and prudent in all her ways, the wise Penelope, daughter of Icarius. Verily, we left her a bride new wed when we went to the war, and a child was at her breast, who now, methinks, sits in the ranks of men, happy in his lot, for his dear father shall behold him on his coming, and he shall embrace his sire as is meet. But us for my wife, she suffered me not so much as to have my fill of gazing on my son, ere that she slew me, even her lord. And yet another thing will I tell thee, and do thou ponder it in thy heart. Put thy ship to land in secret, and not openly, on the shore of thy dear country, for there is no more faith in women. But come, declare me this, and plainly tell it all, if haply ye hear of my son as yet living, either it may be in Orchomenus, or in sandy Pylos, or perchance with Menelaus in wide Sparta, for goodly Orestes hath not yet perished on the earth. Even so he spake, but I answered him, saying, Son of Atreus, wherefore dost thou ask me straitly of these things? Nay, I know not at all, whether he be alive or dead. It is ill to speak words light as wind. Thus we twain stood sorrowing, holding sad discourse, while the big tears fell fast, and therewithal came the soul of Achilles, son of Peleus and of Patroclus, and of noble Antilochus and of Aias, who in face and form was goodliest of all the Danaans, after the noble son of Peleus. And the spirit of the son of Aeacus, fleet of foot, knew me again, and making lament spake to me winged words. Son of Laertes, of the seed of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, man overbold, what new deed and hardier than this wilt thou devise in thy heart? How durst thou come down to the house of Hades, where dwell the senseless dead, the phantoms of men outworn? So he spake, but I answered him, Achilles, son of Peleus, mightiest far of the Achaeans. I am come hither to seek to Tiresias, if he may tell me any counsel, how I may come to rugged Ithaca, for not yet have I come nigh the Achaean land, nor set foot on mine own soil, but am still in evil case, while as for thee, Achilles, none other than thou wast heretofore the most blessed of men, nor shall any be hereafter. For of old, in the days of thy life, we Argives gave thee one honor with the gods. And now thou art a great prince here among the dead. Wherefore let not thy death be any grief to thee, Achilles. Even so I spake, and he straightway answered me, and said, Nay, speak not comfortably to me of death, O great Odysseus. Rather would I live on ground, as the hireling of another, with a landless man who had no great livelihood, than bear sway among all the dead that be departed. But come, tell me tidings of that lordly son of mine. Did he follow to the war to be a leader or not? Tell me of noble Peleus, if thou hast heard aught. Is he yet held in worship among the Myrmidons, or do they dishonor him from Hellas to Phthia? For that old age binds him hand and foot. For I am no longer his champion under the sun, so mighty a man as once I was, when in wide Troy I slew the best of the host, and succored the Argives. Ah! Could I but come for an hour to my father's house, and then I was, so would I make my might and hands invincible, to be hateful to many and one of those who do him despite and keep him from his honor. Yeah, there's a ton of names. This is just Odysseus getting to see the Hall of Fame of everybody in Greek philosophy and history and mythos. So I imagine to the Greeks this was really exciting because they knew everybody. It was all a reference. It's like Avengers Endgame. You know everybody's like, oh, there they are, there they are, there they are. It's the Greeks, though. Even so he spake, but I answered him, saying, As for noble Peleus, verily, I have heard naught of him, but concerning thy dear son of Neoptolemus, I will tell thee all the truth, according to thy word. Kingdom Hearts of Greek mythology. Yep, that's a good way to put it. It was I that led him up out of Skyros in my good hollow ship, in the wake of the goodly grieved Achaeans. Now oft as we took counsel around Troy town, he was ever the first to speak, and no word missed the mark. The godlike Nestor and I alone surpassed him. But whensoever we Achaeans did battle on the plain of Troy, he never tarried behind in the throng or the press of men, but ran out far before us all, yielding to none in that might of his. And many men he slew in warfare dread. But I could not tell of all or name their names, even all the host he slew in succoring the archives. But how he smote with the sword that son of Telephus, the hero Eurypylus, and many Ceteians of his company were slain around him by reason of a woman's bribe. He truly was the comeliest man that I ever saw, next to goodly Memnon. And again, when we, the best of the Argives, were about to go down into the horse which Epeius wrought, and the charge of all was laid on me, both to open the door of our good ambush and to shut the same, then did the other princes and counselors of the Danaans wipe away the tears, and the limbs of each one trembled beneath him. But never once did I see thy son's fair face wax pale, nor did he wipe the tears from his cheeks. But he besought me often to let him go forth from the horse, and kept handling his sword hilt and his heavy bronze-shod spear, and he was set on mischief against the Trojans. But after we had sacked the steep city of Priam, he embarked unscathed with his share of the spoil, and with a noble prize. He was not smitten with the sharp spear, and got no wound in close fight, and many such chances there be in war, for Ares rageth confusedly. So I spake, and the spirit of the son of Aeacus, fleet of foot, passed with great strides along the mead of Asphodel, rejoicing in that I had told him of his son's renown. But lo, other spirits of the dead that be departed stood sorrowing, and each one asked of those that were dear to them. The soul of Aias, son of Telamon, alone stood apart, being still angry for the victory wherein I prevailed against him, in the suit by the ships concerning the arms of Achilles, that his lady mother had set for a prize, and the sons of the Trojans made award, and Pallas Athene. Would that I had never prevailed and won such a prize. So goodly a head hath the earth closed over, for the sake of those arms, even over Aias, who in beauty and in feats of war was of a mold above all the other Danaans. Next to the noble son of Peleus, to him then I spake softly, saying, Aias, son of noble Telamon, so art thou not even in death to forget thy wrath against me, by reason of those arms accursed, which the gods set to be the bane of the Argives? What a tower of strength fell in thy fall, and we Achaeans ceased not to sorrow for thee, even as for the life of Achilles, son of Peleus. Nay, there is none other to blame but Zeus, who hath borne wondrous hate to the army of the Danaan spearsmen, and laid on thee thy doom. Nay, come hither, my lord, that thou mayest hear my word and my speech. Master thy wrath and thy proud spirit. So I spake, but he answered me not a word, and passed to Erebus after the other spirits of the dead that be departed. Even then, despite his anger, would he have spoken to me or I to him, but my heart within me was minded to see the spirits of those others that were departed. There then I saw Minos, glorious son of Zeus, wielding a golden scepter, giving sentence from his throne of the dead, or to the dead, while they sat and stood round the prince, asking his dooms through the wide-gated house of Hades. And after him I marked the mighty Orion driving the wild beasts together over the mead of asphodel, the very beast that himself had slain on the lonely hills, with a strong mace of all bronze in his hands that is ever unbroken. And then I saw Tityos, son of renowned earth, lying on a leveled ground, and he covered 9 roods as he lay, and vultures twain beset him on one on either side, and gnawed at his liver, piercing even to the caul. But he drave them not away with his hands, for he had dealt violently with Leto, the famous bedfellow of Zeus, as she went up to Pytho through the fair lawns of Panopeus. Moreover, I beheld Tantalus in grievous torment, standing in a mere, and the water came nigh unto his chin, and he stood straining as one athirst, but he might not attain to the water to drink of it. For often as that old man stooped down in his eagerness to drink, so often the water was swallowed up, and it vanished away, and the black earth still showed at his feet. For some god parched it evermore, and tall trees flowering shed their fruit overhead, pears and pomegranates and apple trees with bright fruit, and sweet figs and olives in their bloom, whereat when that old man reached out his hands to clutch them, the wind would toss them to the shadowy clouds. Yea, and I beheld Sisyphus in strong torment, grasping a monstrous stone with both his hands. He was pressing thereat with hands and feet, and trying to roll the stone upward toward the brow of the hill, but oft as he was about to hurl it over the top, the weight would drive him back. So once again to the plain rolled the stone, the shameless thing, and he once more kept heaving and straining, and the sweat the while was pouring down his limbs, and the dust rose upwards from his head. And after him I descried the mighty Heracles, his phantom, I say. But as for himself, he hath joy at the banquet among the deathless gods, and hath to wife Heb of the fair ankles, child of great Zeus, and of Hera of the golden sandals. And all about him there was a clamor of the dead, as if it were fowls flying in every way in fear, and he like black night, with bow uncased and shaft upon the string, fiercely glancing around, like one in the act to shoot. And about his breast was an awful belt, a baldric of gold, whereon wondrous things were wrought, bears and wild lions and boars with flashing eyes, and strife and battles and slaughters and murders of men. Nay, now that he hath fashioned this, never another may he fashion, whoso stored in his craft the device of that belt. And anon he knew me when his eyes beheld me, and making lament he spake unto me winged words. Son of Laertes, of the seed of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, ah, wretched one! Dost thou too lead such a life of evil doom as I endured beneath the rays of the sun? I was the son of Zeus Cronion, yet had I trouble beyond measure, for I was subdued unto a man far worse than I. He enjoined on me hard adventures, yea, and on a time he sent me hither to bring back the hound of hell, for he devised no harder task for me than this. I lifted the hound, and brought him forth out of the house of Hades, and Hermes sped me on my way in the grey-eyed Athene. Therewith he departed again into the house of Hades, but I abode there still, if, perchance, someone of the hero folk besides might come, who died in old time. Yea, and I should have seen the men of old, who I was fain to look on, Theseus and Perithous, renowned children of the gods. But ere that might be the myriad tribes of the dead thronged up together with wondrous clamor, and pale fear gat hold of me, lest the high goddess Persephone should send me the head of the Gorgon, that dread monster from out of Hades. Straightway then I went to the ship, and bade my men mount the vessel, and loose the hawsers. So speedily they went on board, and sat upon the benches. And the wave of the flood bore the bark down the stream of Oceanus, we rowing first, and afterwards the fair wind was our convoy. That brings us to the end of chapter 11. So yeah, that was just an entire parade of the well-to-do departed. First with he got hold of Tiresias nice and early, as he should have. Good. He followed instructions. figured out his plan, but then he just kept going down the line of the wives of heroes, the friends departed that he lost in and around the siege of Troy, and then the great laundry list of heroes of other myths and legends. There's at least one Disney story made out of these. So, Kingdom Hearts might not be too far off if we're being honest here. Alright. Let's go ahead and carry on with Book 12 now. Odysseus, his passage by the Sirens, and by Scylla and Charybdis, the sacrilege committed by his men in the Isle of Thrinacia, the destruction of his ships and men, how he swam on a plank 9 days together and came to Aegydia, where he stayed 7 years with Calypso. Now after the ship had left the stream of the river Oceanus, and was come to the wave of the wide sea and the Isle of Aeon, where is the dwelling place of early dawn and her dancing grounds, and the land of sun rising, upon our coming thither we beached the ship in the sand, and ourselves too stepped ashore on the sea beach. There we fell on sound sleep and awaited the bright dawn. So soon as early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, I sent forth my fellows to the house of Circe, to fetch the body of dead Elpenor, and speedily we cut billets of wood, and sadly we buried him, where the furthest headland runs out into the sea, shedding big tears. But when the dead man was buried and burned, when the dead man was burned, and the arms of the dead, we piled a barrow and dragged up thereon a pillar, and on the topmost mound we set the shapen oar. Now all that task we finished, and our coming from out of Hades was not unknown to Circe, but she arrayed herself and speedily drew nigh, and her handmaids, with her bare flesh and bread in plenty, and dark red wine, and the fair goddess stood in the midst and spake in our ears, saying, Men overbold, who have gone alive into the house of Hades to know death twice, while all men else die once for all. Nay, come, eat ye meat and drink wine here all day long, and with the breaking of the day ye shall set sail. And myself, I will show you the path and declare each thing, that ye may not suffer pain or hurt through any grievous ill contrivance by sea or on the land. So spake she, and our lordly souls consented thereto. Thus, for that time we sat the livelong day, until the going down of the sun, feasting on abundant flesh and on sweet wine. Now, when the sun sank and the darkness came on, my company laid them to rest by the hawsers of the ship. Then she took me by the hand and led me apart from my dear company, and made me to sit down, and laid herself at my feet, and asked all my tale. And I told her all in order duly. Then, at the last, the lady Circe spake unto me, saying, Even so, now all these things have an end. Do thou then hearken, even as I tell thee, and the God himself shall bring it back to thy mind. To the Sirens first shalt thou come, who bewitch all men, whosoever shall come to them. Whoso draws nigh them unwittingly, and hears the sound of the Siren's voice, never doth he see wife or babe stand by him on his return, nor have they joy at his coming. But the Sirens enchant him with their clear song, sitting in the meadow. And all about is a great heap of bones of men, corrupt in death, and round the bones the skin is wasting. But do thou drive thy ship past, and knead honey sweet wax, and anoint therewith the ears of thy company, lest any of the rest hear the song. But if thou myself are minded to hear, let them bind thee in the swift ship, hand and foot, upright in the masthead, and from the mast let rope ends be tied, that with delight thou mayest hear the voice of the Sirens. And if thou shalt beseech thy company, and bid them to loose thee, then let them bind thee yet with more bonds. For when thy friends have driven thy ship past these, I will not tell thee fully which path shall thenceforth be thine. But do thou thyself consider it, and I will speak to thee of either way. On the one side there are beetling rocks, and against them the great wave roars of dark-eyed amphitrite. These ye must know. Are they the blessed gods call the rocks wandering? But this way even winged things may never pass, nay, not even the cowering doves that bear ambrosia to Father Zeus. But the sheer rock evermore takes away one even of these, and the Father sends in another to make up the tale. Thereby no ship of men ever escapes that comes thither, but the planks of ships and the bodies of men confusedly are tossed by the waves of the sea and the storms of ruinous fire. One ship only of all that fare by sea hath passed that way, even Argo, that is, in all men's minds, on her voyage from Eats. And even her the wave would lightly have cast there upon the mighty rocks, but Hare sent her by for love of Jason. On the other part are two rocks, whereof the one reaches with sharp peak to the wide heaven, and a dark cloud encompasses it. This never streams away, and there is no clear air about the peak, neither in summer nor in harvest tide. No mortal man may scale it, or set foot thereon, not though he had 20 hands and feet. For the rock is smooth and sheer, as it were polished, and in the midst of the cliff is a dim cave turned to Erebus, towards the place of darkness, whereby ye shall even steer your hollow ship, noble Odysseus. Not with an arrow from a bow might a man in his strength reach from his hollow ship into that deep cave, and therein dwelleth Scylla, yelping terribly. Her voice indeed is no greater than the voice of a newborn whelp, but a dreadful monster is she, nor would any look on her gladly, not if it were a god that met her. Verily she hath 12 feet all dangling down, and 6 necks exceeding long, and on each a hideous head, and therein 3 rows of teeth, set thick and close, full of black death. Up to her middle is she sunk far down in the hollow cave, but forth she holds her head from the dreadful gulf, and there she fishes, swooping round the rock, for dolphins or sea dogs, or whatso greater beast she may anywhere take, whereof the deep-voiced amphitrite feeds countless flocks. Thereby no sailors boast they have fled scatheless ever with their ship, for with each hand she carries off a man, whom she hath snatched from out of the dark-prowed ship. But that other cliff, Odysseus, thou shalt note, lying lower, hard by the first, thou couldst send an arrow across, and thereon is a great fig tree growing, in fullest leaf, and beneath it mighty Charybdis sucks down black water, for thrice a day she spouts it forth, and thrice a day she sucks it down in terrible wise. Never mayest thou be there when she sucks the water, for none might save thee then from thy bane, not even the Earth-shaker. But take heed, and swiftly drawing nigh to Scylla's rock, drive the ship past, since of a truth it is far better to mourn 6 of thy company in the ship, than all in the selfsame hour. So spake she, but I answered and said unto her, Come, I pray thee herein, goddess, tell me true, if there be any means whereby I might escape from the deadly Charybdis, and avenge me on that other, when she would prey upon my company. So spake I, and that fair goddess answered me, Man overbold, lo, now again the deeds of war are in thy mind, and the travail thereof. Wilt thou not yield thee even to the deathless gods? As for her, she is no mortal, but an immortal plague, dread, grievous, and fierce, and not to be fought with. And against her there is no defense. Flight is the bravest way, for if thou tarry to do on thine armor by the cliff, I fear lest once again she shall sally forth, and catch at thee with so many heads, and seize as many men as before. So drive past with all thy force, and call on Critias, mother of Scylla, which bore her for a bane to mortals, and she will then let her from darting forth thereafter. Then thou shalt come unto the isle of Thrinacia. There are the many kine of Helios, and his brave flocks feeding, 7 herds of kine, and as many goodly flocks of sheep, and 50 in each flock. They have no part in birth or in corruption, and there are goddesses to shepherd them, nymphs with fair tresses, Phaethusa and Lepete, whom bright Neaera bare to Helios Hyperion. Now, when the lady their mother had borne and nursed them, she carried them to the isle of Thrinacia, and to dwell afar, that they should guard their father's flocks and his kine with shambling gait. If thou doest these no hurt, being heedful of thy return, truly ye may even yet reach Ithaca, albeit in evil case. But if thou hurtest them, I foreshow ruin for thy ship and for thy men. And even though thou shouldest thyself escape, late shalt thou return in evil plight, with the loss of all thy company. So spake she, and anon came the golden-throned dawn. Then the fair goddess took her way up the island, but I departed to my ship, and roused my men themselves to mount the vessel and loose the hawsers. And speedily they went aboard and set upon the benches, and sitting orderly, smote the grey sea water with their oars. And in the wake of our dark proud ship she sent a favouring wind that fills the sails, a kindly escort. Even Circe of the braided tresses, a dread goddess of human speech. And straightway we set in order the gear throughout the ship, and sat us down, and the wind and the helmsman guided our bark. Then I spake among my company with a heavy heart. Friends, for as much as it is not well that one or two alone should know of the oracles that Circe, the fair goddess, spake unto me, therefore will I declare them, that with foreknowledge we may die, or haply, shunning death and destiny, escape. First, she bade us avoid the sound of the voice of the wondrous sirens and their field of flowers, and me only she bade listen to their voices. So bind ye me in a hard bond, that I may abide unmoved in my place, upright in the masthead, and from the mast let rope ends be tied. And if I beseech and bid you to set me free, then do ye straiten me with yet more bonds. Thus I rehearsed these things one and all, and declared them to my company. Meanwhile, our good ship quickly came to the island of the Sirens twain, for a gentle breeze sped her on her way. Then straightway the wind ceased, and lo, there was a windless calm, and some god lulled the waves. Then my company rose up and drew in the ship's sails, and stowed them in the hold of the ship, while they sat at the oars and whitened the water with their polished pine blades. But I, with my sharp sword, cleft in pieces a great circle of wax, and with my strong hands kneaded it, and soon the wax grew warm, and that my great might constrained it. And the beam of the Lord Helios, son of Hyperion, and I anointed therewith the ears of all my men in their order, and in the ship they bound me hand and foot upright in the masthead. And from the mast they fastened rope ends, and themselves sat down, and smote the grey water with their oars. For when the ship was within the sound of a man's shout from the land, we, fleeing swiftly on our way, the Sirens espied the swift ship speeding toward them, and they raised their clear-toned song. Hither, come hither, renowned Odysseus, great glory of the Achaeans. Here, stay thy bark, that thou mayest listen to the voice of us twain. For none hath ever driven by this way in his black ship, till he hath heard from our lips the voice sweet as the honeycomb, and hath had joy thereof, and gone on his way the wiser. For lo, we know all things, all the travail that in wide Troy land the Argives and Trojans bear by the gods' design, yea, and we know all that shall hereafter be upon the fruitful earth. So spake they, uttering a sweet voice, and my heart was fain to listen, and I bade my company unbind me, nodding at them with a frown, but they bent to their oars and rowed on. Then straight up rose Perimedes and Eurylochus, and bound me with more cords, and straightened me yet the more. Now, when we had driven past them, nor heard we any longer the sound of the Sirens or their song, forthwith my dear company took away the wax wherewith I had anointed their ears, and loosed me from my bonds. But so soon as we left that isle, thereafter I saw smoke and a great wave, and heard the sea roaring. Then, for very fear, the oars flew from their hands, and down the stream they all splashed, and the ship was holden there, for my company no longer plied with their hands the tapering oars. But I paced the ship and cheered on my men as I stood by each one and spake smooth words. Friends, for as much as in sorrow we are not all unlearned, truly there is no greater woe that is upon us than when the Cyclops penned us by main might in his hollow cave. Yet even thence we made escape by my manfulness, even by my counsel and my wit, and some day I think that this adventure too we shall remember. Come now, therefore, let us all give ear to do according to my word. Do ye smite the deep surf of the sea with your oars, as ye sit on the benches. If peradventure Zeus may grant us to escape from and shun this death. And as for thee, helmsman, thus I charge thee, and ponder it in thine heart, seeing that thou wieldest the helm of the hollow ship. Keep the ship well away from this smoke, and from the wave, and hug the rocks, lest the ship, ere thou art aware, start from her course to the other side, and so thou hurl us into ruin. So I spake, and quickly they hearkened to my words. But of Scylla I told them nothing more, a bane none might deal with, lest haply my company should cease from rowing for fear, and hide them in the hold. In that same hour I suffered myself to forget the hard behest of Circe, and that she bade me in no wise be armed. But I did on my glorious harness, and caught up 2 long lances in my hands, and went on to the decking of the prow, for thence methought that Scylla of the rock would first be seen, who was to bring woe on my company. Yet could I not spy her anywhere, and my eyes waxed weary for gazing all about toward the darkness of the rock. Next we began to sail up the narrow strait lamenting, for on the one side lay Scylla, and on the other the mighty Charybdis in terrible vice sucked down the salt sea water. As often as she belched it forth, like a cauldron on a great fire, she would seethe up through all her troubled deeps, and overhead the spray fell on the tops of either cliff. But oft as she gulped down the great salt sea water, within she was all plain to see her troubled deeps. And the rock around roared horribly beneath the earth, and was manifest swart with sand, and pale fear gat hold on my men. Toward her, then, we looked fearing destruction, but Scylla, meanwhile, caught from out my hollow ship 6 of my company, the hardiest of their hands, and the chief in might. And looking up into the swift ship to find my men, even then I marked their feet and hands as they were lifted on high, and they cried aloud in their agony, and called me by my name for that last time of all. Even as when, as fisher on some headland lets down with a long rod his baits for a snare to the little fishes below, casting into the deep the horn of an ox of the homestead. And as he catches each, flings it writhing ashore, so writhing were they borne upward to the cliff, and there she devoured them, shrieking in her gates, they stretching forth their hands to me in the dread death struggle. And the most pitiful thing was this, that mine eyes have seen of all my travail in searching out the paths of the sea. Now, when we had escaped the rocks and dread Charybdis and Scylla, thereafter we came to the fair island of the god, where were the goodly kine, broad of brow, and the many brave flocks of Helios Hyperion. Then, while as yet I was in my black ship and upon the deep, I heard the lowing of the cattle being stalled, and the bleating of the sheep, and on my mind there fell the saying of the blind seer, Theban Tiresias, and of Circe of Aia, who charged me very straitly to shun the isle of Helios, the gladdener of the world. Then I spake out among my company in sorrow of heart. Hear my words, my men, albeit in evil plight, that I may declare unto you the oracles of Tiresias and of Circe of Aia, who very straitly charged me to shun the isle of Helios, the gladdener of the world. For there, she said, the most dreadful mischief would befall us. Nay, drive ye then the black ship beyond and past that isle. So spake I, and their heart was broken within them. And Eurylochus straightway answered me sadly, saying, Hardy art thou, Odysseus, of might beyond measure, and thy limbs are never weary. Verily, thou art fashioned all of iron, that sufferest not thy fellows, fordone with toil and drowsiness, to set foot on shore, where we might presently prepare us a good supper in this sea-girt island. But even as we are thou biddest us fare blindly through the sudden night, and from the isle go wandering on the misty deep, and strong winds, the bane of ships, are born of the night. How could a man escape from utter doom, if there chanced to come a sudden blast of the south wind, or of the boisterous west, which mainly wrecks ships? Beyond the will of the gods, the lords of all? Howbeit, for this present, let us yield to the black night, and let us make ready our supper, abiding by the swift ship. And in the morning we will climb on board, and put out into the broad deep. So spake Eurylochus, and the rest of my company consented thereto. Then at the last I knew that some god was indeed imagining evil, and I uttered my voice, and spake unto him winged words. Eurylochus, verily, ye put force upon me, being but one among you all. But come, swear me now a mighty oath, one and all, to the intent that if we light on a herd of kine, or a great flock of sheep, none in the evil folly of his heart may slay any sheep or ox. But in quiet eat ye the meat which the deathless Circe gave. So I spake, and straightway they swore to refrain as I commanded them. Now, after they had sworn and done that oath, we stayed our well-builded ship in the hollow harbor near to a well of sweet water. And my company went forth from out the ship, and deftly got ready supper. But when they had put from them the desire of meat and drink, thereafter they fell a-weeping, as they thought upon their dear companions, whom Scylla had snatched from out the hollow ship and so devoured. And deep sleep came upon them amid their weeping. And when it was the third watch of the night, and the stars had crossed the zenith, Zeus, the cloud-gatherer, roused against them an angry wind with wondrous tempest, and shrouded in clouds land and sea alike, and from heaven sped down the night. Now, when early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, we beached the ship, and dragged it up within a hollow cave. There were the fair dancing grounds of the nymphs, and the places of their session. Thereupon I ordered a gathering of my men, and spake in their midst, saying, Friends, for as much as there is yet meat and drink in the swift ship, let us keep our hands off those kine, lest some evil thing befall us. For these are the kine and the brave flocks of a dread god, even of Helios, who overseeth all and overheareth all things. So I spake, and their lordly spirit hearkened thereto. Then, for a whole month, the south wind blew without ceasing, and no other wind arose, save only the east and the south. Now, so long as my company still had corn and red wine, they refrained them from the kine, for they were fain of life. But when the corn was now all spent out the ship, and they went wading and wandering with barbed hooks in quest of game, as needs they must, fishes and fowls, whatsoever might come to their hand, for hunger gnawed at their belly. Then at last I departed up the isle, that I might pray to the gods, if, perchance, some one of them might show me a way of returning. And now, when I had returned my company on my way through the island, I laved my hands where there was a shelter from the wind, and prayed to all the gods that hold Olympus. But they shed sweet sleep on my eyelids, and Eurylochus the while set forth an evil counsel to my company. Hear my words, my friends, though ye be in evil case. Truly, every shape of death is hateful to wretched mortals, but to die of hunger, and so meet doom, is most pitiful of all. Nay, come, we will drive off the best of the kine of Helios, and will do sacrifice to the deathless gods who keep wide heaven. And if we may yet reach Ithaca, our own country, forthwith we will rear a rich shrine to Helios Hyperion, and therein would we set many a choice offering. But if he be somewhat wroth for his cattle with straight horns, and is fain to wreck our ship, and the other gods follow his desire, rather with one gulp at the wave would I cast my life away, than be slowly straitened to death in a desert isle. So spake Eurylochus, and the rest of the company consented thereto. Forthwith they drove off the best of the kine of Helios, that were nigh at hand, for the fair kine of shambling gait and broad of brow were feeding no great way from the dark prowed ship. Then they stood round the cattle, and prayed to the gods, plucking the fresh leaves from an oak of lofty boughs, for they had no white barley on board the decked ship. Now, after they had prayed and cut the throats of the kine and flayed them, they cut out slices of the thighs and wrapped them in the fat, making a double fold. And thereon they laid raw flesh. Yet had they no pure wine to pour over the flaming sacrifices. But they made a libation with water, and roasted the entrails over the fire. Now, after the thighs were quite consumed, and they had tasted the inner parts, they cut the rest up small and spitted it on spits. In the same hour, deep sleep sped from my eyelids, and I sallied forth to the swift ship in the sea banks. But on my way, as I drew near to the curved ship, the sweet savor of the fat came all about me. I groaned and spake out before the deathless gods. Father Zeus, and all ye other blessed gods that live forever, verily, to my undoing ye have lulled me with a ruthless sleep, and my company abiding beyond have imagined a monstrous deed. Then swiftly to Helios Hyperion came Lempetie of the long robes, with the tidings that we had slain his kind. And straight he spake with angry heart amid the immortals, Father Zeus, and all ye other blessed gods that live forever, take vengeance, I pray you, on the company of Odysseus, son of Laertes, that have insolently slain my cattle, wherein I was wont to be glad, as I went toward the starry heaven, and when I again turned earthward from the firmament. And if they pay me not full atonement for the cattle, I will go down to Hades and shine among the dead. And Zeus, the cloud-gatherer, answered him, saying, Helios, do thou, I say, shine on amidst the deathless gods, and amid mortal men upon the earth, the grain-giver. But as for me, I will soon smite their swift ship with my white bolt, and cleave it in pieces in the midst of the wine-dark deep. This I heard from Calypso of the fair hair, and she said that she herself had heard it from Hermes the messenger. But when I had come down to the ship and to the sea, I went up to my companions and rebuked them one by one. For we could find no remedy. The cattle were dead and gone, and soon thereafter the gods showed forth for signs and wonders to my company. The skins were creeping, and the flesh bellowing upon the spits, both the roast and raw. And there was a sound as the voice of kine. Then, for 6 days my dear company feasted on the best of the kind of Helios, which they had driven off. But when Zeus, son of Cronos, added the 7th day thereto, thereafter the wind ceased to blow with a rushing storm, and at once we climbed the ship and launched into the broad deep, when we had set up the mast and hoisted the white sails. But now, when we left that isle, nor any other land appeared, but the sky and sea only. Even then the son of Cronos stayed a dark cloud above the hollow ship, and beneath it the deep darkened. The ship ran on her way for no long while, for of a sudden came the shrilling west with the rushing of a great tempest, and the blast of wind snapped the 2 forestays of the mast, and the mast fell backward, and all the gear dropped into the bilge. And behold, on the hind part of the ship the mast struck the head of the pilot, and brake all the bones of his skull together. And like a diver he dropped down from the deck, and his brave spirit left his bones. In that same hour Zeus thundered and cast his bolt upon the ship, and she reeled all over, being stricken by the bolt of Zeus, and was filled with sulphur. And lo, my company fell from out the vessel. Like seagulls they were borne round the black ship upon the billows, and God reft them of returning. But I kept pacing through my ship, till the surge loosened the sides from the keel, and the waves swept her along, stripped of her tackling, and brake her mast clean off at the heel. Now the backstay fashioned of an oxhide had been flung thereon. Therewith I lashed together both keel and mast, and sitting thereon I was borne by the ruinous winds. Then verily the west wind ceased to blow with a rushing storm, and swiftly withal the south wind came, bringing arrow to my soul, that so I might again measure back that space of sea, the way to deadly Charybdis. All the night was I borne, but with the rising of the sun I came to the rock of Scylla, and to dread Charybdis. Now she had sucked down her salt sea water, when I was swung up on high to the tall fig tree, whereto I clung like a bat, and could find no sure rest for my feet, nor place to stand. For the roots spread far below, and the branches hung aloft out of reach, long and large, and foreshadowed Charybdis. Steadfast I clung till she should spew forth mast and keel again, and late they came to my desire. At the hour when a man rises up from the assembly and goes to supper, one who judges the many quarrels of young men that seek to him for law. At that same hour, those timbers came forth to view from out Charybdis. I let myself drop down hands and feet, and plunged heavily in the midst of the waters beyond the long timbers, and sitting on these, I rowed hard with my hands. But the Father of gods and of men suffered me no more to behold Scylla, else I should never have escaped from utter doom. Thence, for 9 days was I borne, and on the 10th night the gods brought me nigh to the isle of Ogygia, where dwells Calypso of the braided tresses, an awful goddess of mortal speech, who took me in and entreated me kindly. But why rehearse all this tale? For even yesterday I told it to thee and to thy noble wife in thy house, and it liketh me not twice to tell a plain told tale. Alright, that brings us to the end of chapter 12, and pretty much to the present keeping of Odysseus. So the backstory of how everything played out, aside from his time on Ogygia. But we'll see if they'll actually go over that. But they kind of showed enough that probably it doesn't need telling. So we'll see what will come up in the next chapter. But for now, I need to take a quick break, get some air, walk around a little bit, and I will be back in just a few minutes. All right, guys, thanks. Be right back. Okay. One of these days I need to set up an IP camera and point it at the cat tree, because they are both hanging out at the top layers, just chilling while we're reading. So that'll be on one of my to-do list. Cat cam. Yes. All right. We are now a little bit north of halfway. See, yeah, that's. I used to have one. A couple, or I think at my last home, my last apartment. I had a window that looked out on the alley. I was on the ground level in downtown, and my cat at the time loved to just hang out in that window and flirt with anybody who was walking by. Pedestrians walked through there all the time to go to farmers market and stuff. He was popular, so I'd set up a bed in the window for him and then mounted a camera in the wall there. That was good times, but never quite had a quite so perfect position or placement to put a camera up. But I bet I could rig one up here. Might need to mount it on the ceiling though to get the right angle. We'll see. We'll figure it out. It'll happen. I'll make it happen. Anyway, so we are now a little bit north of halfway through the book. We've seen the story of how Odysseus was waylaid on his way back from Troy, and how he never quite made it home. Made it most of the way, and then his crew did something ridiculously dumb, and then they started over. Yep, cats will always find a way to be more popular than their people. That's just, it's how it happens. Yeah, staggeringly, mind-bogglingly dumb. Right, and they were in sight, they could see home, and they're like, I bet Odysseus is holding out on us, let's see. And then, boop, reset. Yeah. So, but they've made it through, and then also they went and did another dumb. They killed a god's cattle. Like, come on. You were explicitly warned by a goddess and by a prophet not to do that. I understand you're hungry, but come on. Come on. So, all the worst came to pass at every turn. Poor Odysseus just straight up cursed. But he came out of it. Nobody else did, but he came out of it. And now he's found his way over to the Phaeacians, and they are ready to send him home. And I think that is about the direction we'll be going from this chapter onward. And so let's return to the book with book 13. Odysseus, sleeping, is set ashore at Ithaca by the Phaeacians, and waking knows it not. Pallas, in the form of a shepherd, helps to hide his treasure. The ship that conveyed him is turned into a rock, and Odysseus, by Pallas, is instructed what to do, and transformed into an old beggar man. So spake he, and dead silence fell on all, and they were spellbound throughout the shadowy halls. Thereupon Alcinous answered him, and spake, saying, Odysseus, now that thou hast come to my high house with the floor of bronze, never, methinks, shalt thou be driven from thy way ere thou returnest. Though thou hast been sore afflicted, and for each man among you that in these halls of mine drink evermore the dark wine of the elders and hearken to the minstrel, this is my word and command. Garments for the stranger are already laid up in a polished coffer with gold curiously wrought, and all other such gifts as the counselors of the Phaeacians bear hither. Come now, let each of us give him a great tripod and a cauldron, and we in turn will gather goods among the people and get us recompense. For it were hard that one man should give without repayment. So spake Alcinous, and the saying pleased them all. Then they went, each one to his house, to lay him down to rest. But so soon as early dawn shone forth, the rosy-fingered, they hastened to the ship, and bare the bronze, the joy of men. And the mighty king Alcinous himself went to the ship, and diligently bestowed the gifts beneath the benches, that they might not hinder any of the crew in their rowing, when they labored at their oars. Then they betook them to the house of Alcinous, and fell to feasting. And the mighty king Alcinous sacrificed before them an ox to Zeus, the son of Cronos, that dwells in the dark clouds, who is lord of all. And when they had burnt the pieces of the thighs, they shared the glorious feast and made merry. And among them harped the divine minstrel Demodocus, whom the people honored. But Odysseus would ever turn his head toward the splendor of the sun, as one fain to hasten its setting. For verily, he was most eager to return. And as when a man longs for his supper, for whom all day long 2 dark oxen drag through the fallow field the jointed plough, yea, and welcome to such an one the high sunlight sinketh, that so he may get him to supper, for his knees wax faint by the way. Even so welcome was the sinking of the sunlight to Odysseus. Then straight he spake among the Phaeacians, masters of the oar, and to Alcinous in chief he made known his word, saying, My lord Alcinous, most notable of all the people, pour ye the drink offering, and send me safe upon my way. And as for you, fare ye well, for now have I all that my heart desired, an escort and loving gifts. May the gods of heaven give me good fortune with them, and may I find my noble wife in my home, and my friends unharmed. While ye, for your part, abide here, and make glad your wedded wives and children. And may the gods vouchsafe all manner of good, and may no evil come nigh the people. So spake he, and they all consented thereto, and bade send the stranger on his way, and that he had spoken aright. Then the mighty Alcinous spake to the henchman, Pontonous, mix the bowl and serve out the wine to all in the hall, that we may pray to Father Zeus, and send the stranger on his way to his own country. So spake he, and Pontonous mixed the honey-hearted wine, and served it to all in turn. And they poured forth before the blessed gods that keep wide heaven, even there as they sat. Then goodly Odysseus arose, and placed in Arete's hand the 2-handled cup, and uttering his voice spake to her winged words. Fare thee well, O Queen, all the days of thy life, till old age come and death that visit all mankind. But I go homeward, and do thou in this thy house rejoice in thy children and thy people, and Alcinous the king. Therewith goodly Odysseus stepped over the threshold, and with him the mighty Alcinous sent forth a henchman to guide him to the swift ship and the sea banks. And Arete sent in this train certain maidens of her household, one bearing a fresh robe and a doublet, and another she joined to them to carry the strong coffer, and yet another bare bread and red wine. Now, when they had come down to the ship and to the sea, straightway the good men of the escort took these things and laid them by in the hollow ship, even all the meat and drink. Then they strewed for Odysseus a rug and a sheet of linen on the decks of the hollow ship, in the hinder part thereof, that he might sleep sound. Then he too climbed aboard and laid him down in silence, while they sat upon the benches, every man in order, and unbound the hawser from the pierced stone. So soon as they leant backwards and tossed the sea water with the oar-blade, a deep sleep fell upon his eyelids, a sound sleep, very sweet, and next akin to death. And even as on a plain a yoke of 4 stallions comes springing all together beneath the lash, leaping high and speedily accomplishing the way, so leaped the stern of that ship, and the dark wave of the sounding sea rushed mightily in the wake, and she ran ever surely on her way. Nor could a circling hawk keep pace with her, of winged things the swiftest. Even thus she lightly sped and cleft the waves of the sea, bearing a man whose counsel was as the counsel of the gods, one that erewhile had suffered much sorrow of heart, in passing through the wars of men and the grievous waves, but for that time he slept in peace, forgetful of all that he had suffered. So when the star came up, that is brightest of all, and goes over ever, heralding the light of early dawn, even then did the seafaring ship draw nigh the island. There is in the land of Ithaca a certain haven of Phorcys, the ancient one of the sea, and thereby are two headlands of sheer cliff, which slope to the sea on the haven's side, and break the mighty wave that ill winds roll without. But within, the decked ships ride unmoored, whence once they have reached the place of anchorage. Now, at the harbor's head is a long-leaved olive tree, and hard by is a pleasant cave and shadowy, sacred to the nymphs that are called the Naiads. And therein are mixing bowls and jars of stone, and there moreover do bees hive, and there are great looms of stone, whereon the nymphs weave raiment of purple stain, a marvel to behold, and therein are waters welling evermore. 2 gates there are to the cave, the one set toward the north wind, whereby men may go down, but the portals toward the south pertain rather to the gods, whereby men may not enter. It is the way of the immortals. Thither they, as having knowledge of that place, let drive their ship, and now the vessel in full course ran ashore, half her keel's length high, so well was she sped by the hands of the oarsmen. Then they alighted from the bent ship upon the land, and first they lifted Odysseus from out the hollow ship, all as he was in the sheet of linen and the bright rug, and laid him yet heavy with slumber on the sand. And they took forth the goods which the lordly Phaeacians had given him on his homeward way by grace of the great-hearted Athene. These they set in a heap by the trunk of the olive tree, a little aside from the road, lest some wayfaring man, before Odysseus awakened, should come and spoil them. Then themselves departed homeward again. But the Shaker of the earth forgat not the threats, wherewith at the first he had threatened godlike Odysseus. And he inquired into the counsel of Zeus, saying, Father Zeus, I for one shall no longer be of worship among the deathless gods, when mortal men hold me in no regard, even Phaeacians, who moreover are of mine own lineage. Lo, now I said that after much affliction Odysseus should come home, for I had no mind to rob him utterly of his return, when once thou hast promised it and given assent. But behold, in his sleep they have borne him in a swift ship over the sea, and set him down in Ithaca, and given him gifts out of measure, bronze and gold in plenty, and woven raiment much store, such as never would Odysseus have won for himself out of Troy, yea, though he had returned unhurt with the share of the spoil that fell to him. And Zeus, the cloud-gatherer, answered him, saying, Lo, now, Shaker of the earth, of widest power, what a word that hast thou spoken! The gods nowise dishonor thee. Hard would it be to assail with dishonor our eldest and our best. But if any man, giving place to his own hardihood and strength, holds thee not in worship, thou hast always thy revenge for the same, even in the time to come. Do thou as thou wilt, and as seems thee good. Then Poseidon, Shaker of the earth, answered him, Straightway would I do even as thou sayest, O god of the dark clouds, but thy wrath I always hold in awe and avoid. Howbeit, now I fain would smite a fair ship of the Phaeacians, as she comes home from a convoy on the misty deep, that thereby they may learn to hold their hands, and cease from giving escort to men, and I would overshadow their city with a great mountain. And Zeus, the gatherer of the clouds, answered him, saying, Friend, learn now what seems best in my sight. At an hour, when the folk are all looking forth from the city at the ship upon her way, smite her into a stone shard by the land, a stone in the likeness of a swift ship, that all mankind may marvel. And do thou overshadow their city with a great mountain. Now when Poseidon, Shaker of the earth, heard this saying, he went on his way to Scheria, where the Phaeacians dwell. There he abode a while, and lo, she drew near the seafaring ship, lightly sped upon her way. Then nigh came her to the Shaker of the earth, and he smote her into a stone, and rooted her far below with the downstroke of his hand, and he departed thence again. Then one to the other they spake winged words, the Phaeacians of the long oars, mariners renowned, and thus would they speak, looking each man to his neighbor. Ah me! Who is this that fettered our swift ship on the deep as she drave homewards? Even now she stood full in sight. Even so they would speak, but they knew not how these things were ordained. And Alcinous made harangue and spake among them, Lo now, in very truth the ancient oracles of my father have come home to me. He was wont to say that Poseidon was jealous of us, for that we give safe escort to all men. He said that the day would come when the god would smite a fair ship of the Phaeacians as she came home from a convoy on the misty deep, and overshadow our city with a great mountain. Thus that ancient one would speak, and lo, all these things now have an end. But come, let us all give ear, and do according to my word. Cease ye from the convoy of mortals. Whensoever any shall come unto our town, and let us sacrifice to Poseidon 12 choice bulls, if perchance he may take pity, neither overshadow our city with a great mountain. So spake he, and they were dismayed and got ready the bulls. Thus were they praying to the Lord Poseidon, the princes and the counselors of the land of the Phaeacians, as they stood about the altar. Even then the goodly Odysseus awoke where he slept on his native land, nor knew he the same again, having now been long afar, for around him the goddess had shed a mist. Even Pallas Athene, daughter of Zeus, to the end that she might make him undiscovered, for that he was, and might expound to him all things, that so his wife should not know him, neither his townsmen and kinfolk, ere the wooers had paid for all their transgressions. Wherefore each thing showed strange to the lord of the land, the long paths, and the sheltering havens, and the steep rocks, and the trees in their bloom. So he started up, and stood, and looked upon his native land. And then he made moan withal, and smote on both his thighs with the downstroke of his hands, and making lament he spake, saying, Oh, woe is me! Unto what mortal's land am I now come? Say, are they froward, and wild, and unjust, or hospitable, and have a God-fearing mind? Whither do I bear all this treasure? Yea, where am I wandering myself? Oh, that the treasure had remained with the Phaeacians where it was, so had I come to some other of the mighty princes, who would have entreated me kindly and sent me on my way. But now I know not where to bestow these things, nor yet will I leave them here behind, lest haply other men make spoil of them. Ah, then, they are not wholly wise or just, the princes and counselors of the Phaeacians, who carried me to a strange land. Verily, they promised to bring me to clear-seen Ithaca, but they performed it not. May Zeus requite them, the god of suppliants, seeing that he watches over all men and punishes the transgressor. But come, I will reckon up these goods and look to them, lest the men be gone, and have taken aught away upon their hollow ship. Therewith he set to number the fair tripods, and the cauldrons, and the gold, and the goodly woven raiment, and of all these he lacked not aught. But he bewailed him for his own country, and he walked downcast by the shore of the sounding sea, and made sore lament. Then Athene came nigh him in the guise of a young man, the herdsman of a flock, a young man most delicate, such as are the sons of kings. And she had a well-wrought mantle that fell in 2 folds about her shoulders, and beneath her beneath her smooth feet she had sandals bound, and a javelin in her hands. And Odysseus rejoiced as he saw her, and came over against her, and uttering his voice spake to her winged words. Friend, since thou art the first that I have chanced on in this land, hail to thee, and with no ill will mayest thou meet me. Nay, save this my substance, and save me too. For to thee, as to a god, I make prayer, and to thy dear knees have I come. And herein tell me true, that I may surely know what land, what people is this? What men dwell therein? Surely, methinks, it is some clear-seen isle, or a shore of the rich mainland that lies and leans upon the deep. Then the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, spake to him again. Thou art witless, stranger, or thou art come from afar, if indeed thou askest of this land. Nay, it is not so very nameless, but that many men know it, both all those who dwell toward the dawning and the sun, and they that abide over against the light toward the shadowy west. Verily, it is rough and not fit for the driving of horses, yet it is not a very sorry isle, though narrow withal. For herein is corn past telling, and herein too wine is found, and the rain is on it evermore, and the fresh dew, and it is good for feeding goats and feeding kine. All manner of wood is here, and watering places unfailing are herein. Wherefore, stranger, the name of Ithaca hath reached even upon Troyland, which men say is far from this Achaean shore. So spake she, and the steadfast, goodly Odysseus was glad, and had joy in his own country, according to the words of Pallas Athene, daughter of Zeus, lord of the Aegis. And he uttered his voice, and spake unto her winged words. Yet he did not speak the truth, but took back the word that was on his lips, for quick and crafty was his wit within his breast. Of Ithaca have I heard tell, even in broad Crete, far over the seas, and now have I come hither myself with these my goods, and I left as much again to my children. When I turned outlaw for the slaying of the dear son of Idomeneus, Orsilochus, swift of foot, who in wide Crete was the swiftest of all men that live by bread. Now he would have despoiled me of all that booty of Troy, for which I had endured great pain of heart, in passing through the wars of men, and the grievous waves of the sea. For this cause that I would not do a favor to his father, and make me his squire in the land of the Trojans, but commanded other fellowship of mine own. So I smote him with a bronze-shod spear as he came home from the field, lying in ambush for him by the wayside, with one of my companions. And dark midnight held the heavens, and no man marked us. But privily I took his life away. Now, after I had slain him with the sharp spear, straightway I went to a ship and besought the lordly Phoenicians, and gave them spoil to their heart's desire. I charged them to take me on board, and land me at Pylos or at goodly Elis, where the Epeans bear rule. Howbeit, of a truth, the might of the wind drave them out of their course, sore against their will, nor did they wilfully play me false. Thence we were driven wandering, and came hither by night. And with much ado we rowed onward into the harbor, nor took we of any thought of supper, though we stood sore in need thereof. But even as we swept ashore, and all lay down, then over me there came sweet slumber in my weariness. But they took forth my goods from the hollow ship, and set them by me where I myself lay upon the sands. Then they went on board, and departed for the fair lying land of Sidon, where, while as for me, I was left stricken at heart. So spake he, and the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, smiled and caressed him with her hand, and straightway she changed to the semblance of a woman, fair and tall, and skilled in splendid handiwork. And uttering her voice, she spake unto him winged words. Crafty must he be, and knavish, who would outdo thee in all manner of guile, even if it were a god encountered thee. Hardy man, subtle of wit, of guile insatiate. So thou wast not even in thine own country to cease from thy slights and knavish words, which thou lovest from the bottom of thy heart. But come, no more, let us tell of these things, being both of us practised in deceits, for that thou art of all men far the first in counsel and in discourse, and I, in the company of all the gods, win renown for my wit and wile. Yet thou knewest not me, Pallas Athene, daughter of Zeus, who am always by thee and guard thee in all adventures. Yea, and I made thee to be beloved of all the Phaeacians. And now am I come hither to contrive a plot with thee, and to hide away the goods that by my counsel and design the noble Phaeacians gave thee on thy homeward way. And I would tell thee how great a measure of trouble thou art ordained to fulfill within thy well-builded house. But do thou harden thy heart, for so it must be, and tell none, neither man nor woman, of all the folk, that thou hast indeed returned from wandering, but in silence endure much sorrow, submitting thee to the despot of men. And Odysseus, of many counsels, answered her, saying, Hard it is, goddess, for mortal man that meets thee to discern thee, howsoever wise he be, for thou takest upon thee every shape. But this I know well, that of old thou wast kindly to me, so long as we sons of the Achaeans made war in Troy. But so soon as we had sacked the steep city of Priam, and had gone on board our ships, and the god had scattered the Achaeans, thereafter I have never beheld thee, daughter of Zeus, nor seen thee coming on board my ship to ward off sorrow from me. But I wandered evermore with a stricken heart, till the gods delivered me from my evil case. Even till the day when within the fat land of the men of Phaeacia thou didst comfort me with thy words, and thyself didst lead me to their city. And now I beseech thee in thy father's name to tell me, for I deem not that I am come to clear-seen Ithaca, but I roam over some other land. And methinks that thou speakest thus to mock me and beguile my mind. Tell me, whether in very deed I am come to mine own dear country. Then the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, answered him, Yea, such a thought as this is ever in thy breast. Wherefore I may in no wise leave thee in thy grief. So courteous art thou, so ready of wit, and so prudent. Right gladly would any other man on his return from wandering have hasted to behold his children and his wife in his halls, but thou hast no will to learn or to hear aught, till thou hast furthermore made trial of thy wife, who sits as ever in her halls, and warily for her the nights wane always, and the days in shedding of tears. But of this I never doubted, but ever knew it in my heart, that thou wouldst come home with the loss of all thy company. Yet I tell thee, I had no mind to be at strife with Poseidon, my own father's brother, who laid up wrath in his heart against thee, being angered at the blinding of his dear son. But come, and I will show thee to the place of the dwelling of Ithaca, and thou mayst be assured. Lo, here is the haven of Phorcys, the ancient one of the sea, and here at the haven's head is the olive tree with spreading leaves, and hard by it is the pleasant cave and shadowy, sacred to the nymphs that are called the Naiads. Yonder, behold, is the roofed cavern, where thou offeredst many an acceptable sacrifice of hecatombs to the nymphs, and lo, this hill is Neriton, all clothed in forest. Therewith the goddess scattered the mist, and the land appeared. And then the steadfast, goodly Odysseus was glad, rejoicing in his own land. And he kissed the earth, the grain-giver, and anon he prayed to the nymphs and lifted up his hands, saying, Ye Naiad nymphs, daughters of Zeus, never did I think to look on you again. But now be ye greeted in my loving prayers, yea, and gifts as aforetime I will give, if the daughter of Zeus, driver of the spoil, suffer me of her grace myself to live, and bring my dear son to manhood. Then the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, spake to him again, Be of good courage, and let not thy heart be careful about these things. But come, let us straightway set thy goods in the secret place of the wondrous cave, that there they may abide for thee safe. And let us, for ourselves, advise us how all may be for the very best. Therewith the goddess plunged into the shadowy cave, searching out the chambers of the cavern. Meanwhile Odysseus brought up his treasure, the gold and the unyielding bronze, and the fair woven raiment, which the Phaeacians gave him. And these things he laid by with care. And Pallas Athene, daughter of Zeus, lord of the Aegis, set a stone against the door of the cave. Then they twain sat down by the trunk of the sacred olive tree, and devised death for the froward wooers. And the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, spake first, saying, Son of Laertes, of the seed of Zeus, Odysseus of many devices, advise thee how thou mayest stretch forth thine hands upon the shameless wooers, who now these 3 years lord it through thy halls, as they woo thy godlike wife, and prefer the gifts of wooing. And she, that is ever bewailing her for thy return, gives hope to all, and makes promises to every man, and sends them messages. But her mind is set on other things. And Odysseus of many counsels answered her, saying, Lo now, in very truth, I was like to have perished in my halls by the evil doom of Agamemnon, son of Atreus, hadst not thou, goddess, declared me each thing all aright. Come then, weave some counsel whereby I may requite them, and thyself stand by me, and put great boldness of spirit within me, even as in the day when we loosed the shining coronal of Troy. If but thou wouldst stand by me with such eagerness, thou grey-eyed goddess, I would war even with 300 men, with thee, my lady and goddess, if thou of thy grace didst succor me the while. Then the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, answered him, Yea, verily, I will be near thee, nor will I forget thee, whensoever we come to this toil. And methinks that certain of the wooers that devour thy livelihood shall bespatter the boundless earth with blood and brains. But come, I will make thee such like that no man shall know thee. Thy fair skin I will wither on thy supple limbs, and make waste thy yellow hair from off thy head, and wrap thee in a foul garment, such that one would shudder to see a man therein. And I will dim thy two eyes, erewhile so fair, in such wise that thou mayest be unseemly in the sight of all the wooers, and of thy wife and son, whom thou didst leave in thy halls. And do thou thyself first of all go unto the swineherd, who tends thy swine, loyal and at one with thee, and loves thy son and constant Penelope. Him shalt thou find sitting by the swine, as they are feeding near the rock of Corax and the spring of Arethusa. And there they eat abundance of acorn, and drink the black water, things whereby swine grow fat and well-liking. There do thou abide and sit by the swine, and find out all, till I have gone to Sparta, the land of fair women, to call Telemachus thy dear son, Odysseus, who hath betaken himself to spacious Lacedaemon, to the house of Menelaus, to seek tidings of thee, whether haply thou art yet alive. And Odysseus of many counsels answered her, saying, Nay, wherefore then didst thou not tell him, seeing thou hast knowledge of all? Was it, perchance, that he too may wander in sorrow over the unharvested seas, and that others may consume his livelihood? Then the goddess, grey-eyed Athene, answered him, Nay, let him not be heavy on thy heart. I myself was his guide, that by going thither he might win a good report. Lo, he knows no toil, but he sits in peace in the palace of the son of Atreus, and has boundless store about him. Truly, the young men with their black ship, they lie in wait, and are eager to slay him ere he come to his own country. But this, methinks, shall never be. Yea, sooner shall the earth close over certain of the wooers that devour thy livelihood. Therewith Athene touched him with her wand. His fair flesh she withered on his supple limbs, and made waste his yellow hair from off his head. And over all his limbs she cast the skin of an old man, and dimmed his two eyes, erewhile so fair. She changed his raiment to a vile wrap and a doublet, torn garments and filthy, stained with foul smoke, and over all she clad him with the great bald hide of a swift stag. And she gave him a staff and a mean tattered scrip, and a cord therewith to hang it. And after they twain had taken this counsel together, they parted, and she now went to goodly Lacedaemon to fetch the son of Odysseus. And that is the end of chapter 13, and Odysseus has come home. Almost. He's inside of home. Just street up. It's in just about there. But we do not have time yet tonight to continue or get one more chapter in, so we will leave off here. This is actually a really good ending point for the night. It's a bit of a resolution, but we know there's a little bit more tension coming. I'm sure many of us know the story, and this next chapter should be quite exciting. So it's something to look forward to on our next reading, which is going to be this coming Friday. The glorious homecoming of Odysseus, all clad in the guise of a withered old man. I know, right? But we'll see. It may be coming up pretty good so far. He's finally home. He did think that he was abandoned on a random island, though, so that was a bit of a surprise. So even when good things happen to Odysseus, they happen in a way to really just rankle you and make you wonder, man, who did I piss off? Well, you pissed off Poseidon, buddy. Sorry. Don't mess with the gods. And as we've talked about this many times. Every time we come up with something Greek, you got to be careful of the pride with all this. And we saw it even today as he's needing to listen to the sirens because he's Odysseus, he can handle it. And wanting to fight Scylla because he's Odysseus, he can handle it. Well, calm down, Chief. So, gotta temper things a little bit. But the greatest of his adventures are past. For now. And we will see what the world yet has in store for Odysseus, and how things will shape up with Telemachus and with Penelope his family that he's been away from for so many, many years. But that will be a story for next time. Yeah, Odysseus, I'm built different. Nah, I'd win. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. As I mentioned, our next reading is going to be on Friday. Even with where we are in the story, it's only at 55%. So I do wonder if there's like an afterword on this, or if there's just that much of it left after. There's just that much of it left after. Good Lord. You really forget how long this is. You're like, yeah, he's home. Okay, we're done. Or like, get the resolution in. But no, this is just a little bit more than halfway done. I don't think anybody ever remembers what happened like, after the homecoming and everything. I know I don't. So half of this might as well be new to me. I don't know how much of that is because I skipped the readings in school, or if it's just the first half is so memorable that the rest is not. Anyway, I'm yapping again. So let's go ahead and call it here for the evening. Our next reading will be on Friday. I thank you very much for joining us. As always, our video, or the video of this stream, will be left on the channel. I encourage anyone who is following along to take a look through our archives. We've got a lot of books that we've read so far. We've been going since February, so it's been a few months now. We've got a good few books behind us, and there's a lot of fun to be had. So check out the archives. If you'd be so kind, drop a like on them as you visit, and we will maybe sometime catch you as you're up to current as we go through the next books together. So, all right, have a wonderful night, guys, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye now.